He was the man who taught America how a hero should walk, talk, and stand his ground. On screen, John Wayne was the toughest man in the room, a gunslinger, a soldier, a rancher who never flinched. But off-screen, there was another story unfolding, one that had nothing to do with six-shooters or saddles. It was a story about money, how he made it, how he nearly lost it all, and how, in the end, he built something so lasting that his family is still cashing in on it decades after his death. This is the story of how the Duke quietly became one of Hollywood's shrewdest businessmen, and how that legacy turned into a fortune his grandchildren are still living off today. Long before the world knew the name John Wayne, there was a kid named Marion Robert Morrison, born in 1907 in the small town of Winterset, Iowa. His family wasn't wealthy. Life on the plains in the early 1900s meant long days of labor and little room for extravagance, and the Morrisons got by through sheer persistence rather than any stroke of luck. Everything changed when the family packed up and relocated to Glendale, California, chasing a better life the way so many Midwestern families did in that era. It was in Glendale that young Marion picked up the nickname that would follow him for the rest of his life. He had an Airedale Terrier, a big, loyal dog named Duke, and the two of them were inseparable. Local firemen who watched the boy and his dog pass by every day started calling them Little Duke and Big Duke. The dog's name eventually became the boy's identity, and Marion Morrison happily wore it for the rest of his days. As a teenager, Duke was a physical specimen, broad-shouldered, athletic, and gifted enough on the football field to earn a scholarship to the University of Southern California. For a while, it looked like his path in life would run through the world of college athletics, not motion pictures. Then came a body surfing accident that shattered his shoulder and, with it, his football scholarship. The dream of athletic stardom died on a California beach, but it opened a door nobody could have predicted. Through a connection with his old football coach, Duke landed a job as a prop man at Fox Film Corporation. It was unglamorous work, hauling equipment and standing in as an extra in silent pictures nobody remembers today. But it put him in the orbit of a rising young director named John Ford, and that friendship would become the single most important relationship of his professional life. Ford saw something in the tall, broad-shouldered kid that studio executives hadn't noticed yet presence. In 1928, Duke landed a bit part herding geese in a picture called Mother McCree. It was nothing, really, just a few seconds of screen time, but it was a start. In 1930, a director named Raoul Walsh decided that Marion Morrison simply didn't sound like the name of a Western hero. He rechristened him John Wayne, a name with hard consonants and a rugged simplicity that matched the roles the studio hoped to build around him. That same year, Wayne got his first shot at a leading role in The Big Trail, a sweeping, ambitious Western shot in an early widescreen format. The studio had big plans for it, but most theaters at the time couldn't project the new format, and the film flopped commercially. It was a brutal setback for a young actor who had just been handed the keys to stardom. For nearly a decade after that, Wayne toiled in low-budget westerns, the kind of pictures churned out quickly and forgotten just as fast. There was no glamour in it, and there was no fortune being built either. But there was an education happening. Wayne studied everything: how directors composed a shot, how a hero should carry himself, how silence could say more than dialogue. He was quietly assembling the persona that would eventually make him one of the most recognizable faces on the planet. The turning point arrived in 1939, when John Ford cast him as the Ringo Kid in Stagecoach. Unlike the forgettable B-westerns he'd been grinding through, this was a prestige picture, sharp writing, real production value, and a director who knew exactly how to frame his star. Audiences fell for Wayne instantly, and the film earned 7 Academy Award nominations. After 13 years of scraping by, John Wayne had finally arrived. From that point forward, Wayne and Ford would collaborate for more than 2 decades, crafting a body of work that ranged far beyond simple shoot 'em UPS. Films like The Long Voyage Home proved Wayne had genuine dramatic range, not just a strong jawline. As the 1940s and 1950s unfolded, he moved into war pictures as well, earning his first Academy Award nomination for Sands of Iwo Jima in 1949. He continued building his reputation with films like The Searchers, Rio Grande, and She Wore a Yellow Ribbon. each one adding another layer to the tough but honorable persona audiences adored. Wayne wasn't content to simply act in other people's visions, either. He poured years of effort, and a considerable amount of his own money, into directing and starring in The Alamo in 1960, a passion project that reflected his deeply held patriotic beliefs. Later, in 1969, he made The Green Berets, one of the first major studio films to openly support American involvement in Vietnam. Whether audiences agreed with his politics or not, there was no denying Wayne used his fame as a platform for his convictions. That same year, 1969, brought him his only competitive Academy Award for his performance as the boozy, one-eyed U.S. Marshal Rooster Cogburn in True Grit. It was a role that let him poke fun at his own tough guy image while still delivering everything fans loved about him. The Oscar was, in many ways, Hollywood's long overdue acknowledgement that the man wasn't just a movie star. He was a genuine actor. Here's the part of the story most fans never hear about. John Wayne, despite decades of box office dominance, came dangerously close to losing everything twice. In the 1950s, Wayne handed control of his finances to a business manager named Bo Roos. Wayne trusted him completely, which turned out to be a costly mistake. Roos steered him into a business venture in Panama that turned out to be riddled with problems, and Wayne lost roughly $700,000 on that deal alone. Related investments compounded the damage, wiping out another $1 million. For a man earning a fortune on the silver screen, it was a staggering blow, and it left him with far less than anyone would have guessed given his fame. If that wasn't enough, trouble found him again a few years later, this time closer to home. His son-in-law, Donald LaCava, who had married his eldest daughter, was given responsibility over the family's finances. Like Roos before him, LaCava proved to be no better a steward of Wayne's money, and bills began piling up unnoticed. The breaking point, almost comically, came in the form of an unpaid charge from Saks Fifth Avenue for $3,500, a modest sum that nonetheless exposed just how badly things had unraveled behind the scenes. That embarrassment became the catalyst for real change. Wayne cut ties with the people who had mismanaged his money and took the reins himself. He started paying attention to contracts, studying deals before signing them, and steering away from speculative ventures that promised quick riches. It was a hard-earned lesson, but one that transformed him from a movie star who happened to be rich into a genuine businessman who understood how to protect and grow what he'd earned. The wealth he built in his final decades would prove far more durable than anything Bo Roos or Donald LaCava had touched. While Wayne was busy rebuilding his finances and his career, his body was waging a war of its own. In 1956, he filmed The Conqueror on location near St. George, Utah, not far from a site where the U.S. government had conducted nuclear weapons testing just years earlier. Nobody on set understood the risk at the time, but the fallout from those tests had settled into the surrounding soil and air. Of the roughly 220 cast and crew members who worked on that production, an alarming 91 would later be diagnosed with cancer, and 46 ultimately died from the disease, numbers far higher than would be expected by chance. Wayne himself was diagnosed with lung cancer in 1964, a devastating blow made worse by the fact that he'd smoked heavily for most of his adult life. Surgeons removed one of his lungs along with several ribs in an operation few expected him to survive. He proved them wrong, returning to work and continuing to make films for years afterward. Cancer wasn't finished with him, though. Years later, he was diagnosed again, this time with stomach cancer. Rather than hide from the diagnosis, Wayne became an outspoken advocate for cancer awareness, encouraging fans to get screened and take their health seriously. His final film, The Shootist in 1976, cast him as an aging gunfighter dying of cancer, a role that mirrored his own private battle in ways audiences could only guess at during his lifetime. He passed away on June 11, 1979, at 72 years old, having spent his final years fighting the disease with the same stubborn resolve he'd shown throughout his career. When Wayne's estate was settled, its value was estimated at around $7 million, a figure that would translate to something closer to $25 million in today's economy once inflation is accounted for. That fortune included multiple properties, including land in Arizona and Washington state, along with the accumulated earnings of a 5-decade career. His will reflected the same discipline he developed after his earlier financial disasters. Each of his 7 children, born from 2 marriages, received a portion of the estate, along with personal items that carried sentimental weight. His first wife, Josephine, was set up with a trust that provided regular payments for the rest of her life, a gesture that spoke to the respect he still held for her decades after their marriage ended. 2 secretaries who had worked alongside him for years were also remembered with substantial gifts, a quiet acknowledgement of their loyalty. Not everyone was included, however. His third wife, Pilar Palit, had already settled her financial claims through a legal agreement before his death, and the couple had been living apart for years by that point. She received nothing further, and her name doesn't appear in the will at all. Perhaps the most pointed decision in the entire document concerned Donald LaCava, the son-in-law whose financial mismanagement had once left Wayne scrambling to cover a department store bill. Wayne made absolutely certain LaCava would never gain access to any portion of his daughter's inheritance, adding specific language to ensure the money would pass directly to her children or another beneficiary of her choosing if anything happened to her. It was a final, unmistakable statement about who he trusted with his legacy and who he didn't. Wayne's estate wasn't just a pile of money to be divided and spent. It became the foundation for something much bigger. His children carried different pieces of his legacy forward. Michael Wayne stepped into producing, working to protect the family's interests within the film industry itself. Patrick Wayne pursued his own acting career, following in his father's footsteps on screen. Melinda and Isa Wayne took on roles managing family affairs and preserving his story for new generations of fans, while Ethan Wayne, one of the younger sons, has become one of the most visible stewards of the Wayne name, working directly to protect how it's used commercially. That stewardship eventually took the shape of John Wayne Enterprises, a company built specifically to license and manage everything connected to his image and legacy. The family has been deliberate about what carries his name, steering toward products built to last rather than fleeting trends. One notable venture is Wayne Family Estates, a winery that has become one of the more successful pieces of the modern business. There's also a partnership with an outdoor cooking brand, Fire and Flavor, producing grilling equipment that fits naturally with the rugged, outdoorsy image fans associate with the Duke. Beyond that, there's an entire universe of licensed merchandise, apparel, hats, books, and collectibles, all generating steady revenue for the family decades after his final film wrapped. One of the most meaningful pieces of that ongoing legacy is the John Wayne Cancer Foundation, established after his death to fund research and support patients battling the disease that eventually took his life. Through golf tournaments, film screenings, and other fundraising events, the foundation has turned personal tragedy into an organization that continues helping others. A fitting extension of the awareness campaign Wayne himself started while he was still alive. Even now, nearly half a century after his death, the John Wayne name continues generating income through a surprising number of channels. His film catalog remains a steady earner, with classics like Stagecoach, The Searchers, and True Grit still finding audiences through streaming platforms, television broadcasts, and international licensing deals. Every new viewer, in some small way, adds to the estate's bottom line. Merchandise sales continue as well, driven by both nostalgic older fans and younger audiences discovering his films for the first time. The wine and outdoor cooking partnerships bring in additional revenue tied directly to lifestyle branding rather than film royalties, diversifying the family's income beyond simply licensing old movies. On top of all that, the real estate and investments Wayne accumulated during his lifetime, along with those his family has added since, continue appreciating and generating returns. That diversification is really the secret to how the Wayne legacy has stayed financially healthy for so long. If ticket sales for old films slow down in one era, merchandise or brand partnerships can pick up the slack. It's a model built on the same lesson Wayne learned the hard way back in the 1950s. Never depend on a single source of income, and never hand over control without understanding exactly where the money is going. For all the financial intrigue, the scams, the recoveries, the carefully worded will, John Wayne's real legacy was never just about dollars and cents. He became a symbol of a particular version of American identity. Tough, plain-spoken, loyal, and unwilling to back down. Millions of fans projected their own values onto the characters he played, and in doing so, turned him into something closer to folklore than celebrity. In 2007, communities across the country marked what would have been his 100th birthday with celebrations built around the culture he embodied. Chuck wagon dinners, outdoor concerts, and auctions featuring signed photographs and props from his films. Fans traded stories about what his movies meant to them, keeping his memory alive in a way that felt personal rather than corporate. That blend of commerce and genuine affection is really what has allowed the Wayne legacy to endure. His family didn't simply inherit a fortune. They inherited a name that still means something to millions of people, and they've worked to honor that meaning while also building sustainable business around it. From a struggling prop boy in Glendale to one of the wealthiest and most enduring names in entertainment history, John Wayne's story is proof that a legacy built on both hard lessons and genuine values can outlast the man who created it by generations. If you enjoyed learning about the hidden financial story behind one of Hollywood's greatest legends, let us know in the comments, and stick around for more deep dives into the fortunes and secrets of the stars who shaped American culture.